Hello, welcome to Quackalope. Thank you for joining us. Today we're taking a look at Feed the Kraken, a brand new social... Oh, nice of you to join me.
Hey,
Hey,
why did you start without me?
How you doing there, buddy?
Yeah.
So we are taking a look at Feed the Kraken. This is going to be a tactical, point-to-point movement social deduction game that does some really interesting things in the genre. And dare I say, probably one of the most interesting social deduction games both of us have played in a long time.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Whatever the case, if you're brand new to this channel, we are Quackalope.
We're supposed to start both of us here, but Jesse decided to start without me for some reason.
Well, one of us lives about 9 hours away, and I have to drive him down during the weekend, so he's a little tired. Please forgive him for stepping off to the side, but because he's here, please remember to subscribe and hit that like button down below. Leave a comment letting us know how far would you go to film a board game video with one of your best friends.
Probably 30 minutes or an hour?
At least 30 minutes or an hour, whatever the case. Jan, this is our Introduction to series, where we do our very best to not only give you an overview of a game, but then spend a little bit of time diving into around 3 core elements or mechanics of a game and highlighting how a game does it different, unique, makes it interesting, while still talking about the gameplay and the experience of the game as a whole.
And the 3 elements that we're going to be talking about today are going to be social deduction.
Yep, absolutely.
They're going to be point-to-point movement.
Point-to-point movement.
And variable player powers.
Variable player powers.
Ooh.
But before we get there, let me read just a little bit of flavor text.
Where?
You're journeying across the Forgotten Sea. A band of ragtag scurvy
Before you
dogs.
keep going, could you show the flavor text to the camera? There's so much. Did you see? Look at this. It's wonderful.
All right, look, we're working with a prototype copy here. This, of course, is a game that is on its way to Kickstarter. So what you see are beautiful 3D printed miniatures and some prototype stuff that they've gotten into our hands. Production copy of this is going to be super fancy. The prototype copy of this is already super fancy.
Yeah, it's really cool.
But don't judge, you know.
Not at all. This is something that... I don't know what to say there.
It doesn't matter. Like I was saying, with the flavor text, you are a band of pirates?
Yes.
Or...
cultist, potentially.
Or...
maybe.
just good-natured sailors that want to make sure you bring it to port here. You're journeying the ship. It's full of good supplies, some helpful information, and all you have to do, the game's very simple. You just have to convince everyone on the ship to move the ship right here. As long as you get to that port, then everyone on board has achieved a outstanding victory.
Well, some people on board.
Look, we're all sailors in this ship.
Well, not really.
We all have the same mission. We're looking at getting to the port with the supply. Why are we at the cove?
Because there are pirates in this ship. They're just hiding. And not only pirates, there also might be some cultists in there.
Look, there's a chance that someone just wants to be sacrificed to the
Kraken god.
To the Kraken god. There is a chance that you yourself have been, during the course of this conversation, converted into worshiping the squiddy depths, the inky heart, the black hole that is the gaping mouth of the Kraken overlord, and all you want to do is sacrifice your cultist leader into the loving arms. I'm going on a tangent because the first game I played, I was in fact that cultist leader, and it was beautiful.
Yeah,
it was
we won.
Everything I wanted when it comes to a social deduction game. Again, flavor text aside, Jim, what is this game? Because I'm just gonna keep...
just gonna keep going with more flavor. So, as Jesse said, point-to-point movement, you'll be taking the ship, moving it forward, and depending on the decisions of players, you're going to be taking different directions. Depending on the directions that you go, you might end up in special activations or special rounds where you'll be able to investigate players to try and determine their affiliation.
Specifically the captain. Like any good sailing ship would have, this has roles that you're filling that fit the nature of the ship. You have a captain, you have a navigator, and then you have a first mate or lieutenant. And so they will be the ones that everyone votes on, everyone agrees to put them in charge, right? Because you could have a mutiny, you could revolt a little bit, but they're the ones that'll also get the benefit of going through locations, such as finding out more information.
Or
who someone is.
Backstabbing someone.
Splitting that
Oh,
tongue
no,
out.
this is cutting the
That
tongue.
is cutting the tongue out. Yeah, coming across this location, you get to silence someone completely.
What about flagging someone?
Or
flogging someone?
That is going to be flogging someone where you have to get information about what they in fact are not.
Right here.
And then finally, these are going to be the Kraken's lovely embrace. So, Jan, again, because we keep going on tangents on this, how do you play this game?
Yeah, so in traditional social deduction spaces, maybe even similar to games like Secret Hitler, etc., at the beginning of a turn, somebody's going to be named the leader. That leader is going to choose a team.
Yep.
They're going to choose probably between 2 to 3 people.
The
in this game, you choose 2.
Is going to nominate a lieutenant and a navigator.
Those 3 people are then going to chart the course of what's going to happen. Here's the trick.
Yep.
There's going to be cards that every player can choose to try and determine what direction the ship takes. Those cards are drafted by the captain, later passed down to the lieutenant, and finally the navigator puts it into action. The thing is,
there are 3 different objectives when it comes to the course that you're setting in the game, and you're gathering information about the motives of other players as you play, like any good social deduction game would. Here's the thing that makes this so cool. First off, point-to-point movement. You're adjusting and manipulating on an actual physical board. That means that the choices people make have a tactical and strategic response. Instead of moving up and down a chart, you're sailing back and forth around this goal line. Finally, you are also potentially moving towards 3 different win conditions. The fact that there is a cultist group in this game, not just a good and evil, but a third kind of middle ground. The swing of balance, the person who may or may not be helping other players, the person who might be playing with the pirates for one turn and the sailors for another, that becomes really, really interesting.
And the last thing that I at least like about this particular layout, because there's a board here, are the way the rounds are structured. Usually in some social deduction games, you'd have a timing mechanic where it determines, like, now everyone's going to start investigating a particular player. Here, you can choose how things develop, because you could potentially go to this edge of the board, skipping all these tokens, and then suddenly head this way. Or
if
you could
you've
repeat
got control
these.
of the ship, you might be able to. That would be a hard position to win from, though, if we're going to be honest.
Yeah.
But you could.
But the potential's there.
You could.
Potentially, it could happen. It could happen. And that's what I really like about the game. Like, no matter where you are, it's never really a given who's going to win or what side is truly ahead.
Yeah. So, again, brief overview, and then we'll start diving into these salient points. If you're brand new to the idea of a social deduction game, you're going to be working around secret information, each with your own specific win conditions, with a team that you're not sure who exactly is working with you.
Yeah.
So the point of the game, the progression through the game, as you're going through these mechanics that we're going to dive into a little bit more thoroughly, is to not only get to your win condition, achieve your goal, but also discover information about the other players. In this game specifically, you'll do that through a few ways. Through the motives of people to move into regions, through the actions they take when it comes to a team of people, the captain, lieutenant, and navigator, selecting which direction they sail, and then also, most saliently, in almost all social deduction games, it's gonna come down to the conversations and the interactions you have that the game facilitates. I look Jan in the eyes and I say, wow, I've never noticed your eyes before.
Sure. What does that do? What does that have to do with the game, Jesse?
I wasn't talking about the game.
Oh, okay, you never were?
You shouldn't take a moment.
Are you trying to distract me? I feel you're trying to distract me, that you're trying to get us going to the Kraken God.
No, really,
Is that
just
true?
for a moment. I've never really looked into your eyes before.
With all that being said, let's actually start talking about the 3 main components that we talked about: social deduction, variable player powers, and point-to-point movement.
So the one that we've already leaned into a little bit, and I think hit on a bit, is going to be social deduction. Now, we've described what that is.
Yes.
I just finished that. What does this do when it comes to social deduction that we haven't already covered that makes this such a interesting experience?
Well, here I think we'll say that it's going to come down to the combination of the other main components that we've talked about and how those kind of blend together. But at the end of the day, this is, in all shape and form, a traditional take on social deduction game if you only take it at surface level.
Yeah, man, this feels like a game, though.
Exactly, but it's because of the other elements.
Yeah, I think you're right.
imbued.
The stuff we're going to go into, the point-to-point movement, and the fact that there are also variable player powers, this physical space you're playing in, for me, adds a level of interest to a social deduction game that brings it into a board game space instead of a party game kind of genre.
Yeah, and so just to touch upon a little bit about social deduction here and what this game does, that's not necessarily incredibly unique about it, but it still makes this game what it is. The way that the conversations are structured here, because you have a cultist leader, they are able to basically transform other players secretly throughout the journey.
Sure.
That's something that's pretty unique to this, honestly. There's different types of social deduction games where roles are established at the onset, and once you have a role, you're set. Here, it's transformative. It can become anything. Like, the entire table could potentially become yellow, and then you have absolutely no
Not the
shot.
entire table, but out of 7 players, I think you have the chance to convert 2 or 3 of them, which
And that's huge.
Sways the balance of the game.
And it's interesting because it puts the onus on a player to really work hard at getting their victory condition. Like, it's them against the entire world, and that's pretty fascinating. But you also have the more traditional sides where it's like good against evil, and evil is always in the minority, but evil has a lot of sway.
Yeah.
Because in a lot of social deduction games, well, basically, what you'll basically do is you'll have a sort of set of cards, and you'll put, oh, this is a success, and this is a fail, and there's a single fail in there. Sorry, bad news. The mission or the objective that you were trying to complete is completely erroneous. Here, again, we'll touch upon this when we get to point-to-point movement. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty innovative within the space of social deduction games
and the
as well.
information you're given every turn, I think there's 2 elements when it comes to social deduction where this stands out to me.
Yep.
And I don't know that they are dramatically game-changing if you think about them, but when you play with them, I think they really do make a significant difference. The chance to visually see where my ship is going on a map towards a win condition makes the motive and the way you play the game, for me, sing.
Yeah.
And then finally, the fact that there are 3 points of interest. There's 3 axes that you could move on, and they're not all just good or bad. There could be a reason why a pirate crew might want to push the ship forward to prevent someone from getting access to 2 of those microscopes, right? Or there could be a reason why, you know, the cultist leaders will sail around to the sailor's side because they think they might be able to work with the pirates once they get here to cut out someone's tongue.
Yep.
There's always a level of good information that second guesses itself.
And another thing that I'll add about this particular one that does pretty differently, social deduction games tend to be very quick affairs, at least the grand majority of them.
Sure.
That's not going to be the case here.
This is a game.
This is something substantial. Just the concept that you could be here and then start getting pushed over here and then going back here it makes the round structure more malleable depending on the players.
That being said, it doesn't have to be overly long. I mean, if you're playing quickly, then you can cycle through it. Like most social deduction games, the conversation is where that time is facilitated. But this, even playing online, where it was slowed down
considerably
to the nth degree, or playing with 7 or 8 players, where the sweet spot for this game is.
Yes.
It never felt laggy for me.
No. Like, you're always invested during it, and I think it has to do with all like the components and the elements. It's not an abstract affair.
Yeah.
There's a little bit more involvement in there than you might see in other lighter games like this.
So that's a social deduction game. Let's talk about I feel like we're already talking about some of these elements.
We are 100%.
The utility of point-to-point movement.
Yeah.
Here.
So point-to-point movement in this game is basically going to make this game, and it's what's going to separate it from everything else. The concept that you have a physical object and the goal is right in front of you, is, as you said, is already going to establish a certain conversation on the board and between all players. The idea that depending on where you move, you will trigger different elements, and not just trigger different elements, but you could trigger chains of the same elements is fantastic.
There's also the opportunity that the game doesn't play the same every time you play it. It's not always up a single scale. This visual and thematic space is built around the idea of you have opportunity to manipulate the steps you're taking. You may only get 1 microscope where you could potentially get 2, and that would give the captain a whole new level of information. Now, one more time, just because I feel like we're going over things because we're excited about it. The way that the point-to-point movement is actually going to work. So you're going to have a captain. He's going to select a lieutenant and a navigator. The captain and I believe the lieutenant are both going to put in a series of directions working together. And then the navigator will listen to that information, look at it secretly, and make the final decision on where to go. not dramatically unique when it comes to player choice in a social deduction game, but because that is then represented in a visual space, that becomes a much more interesting decision for us.
Yeah, and like what I really like about this particular point-to-point movement game, it's that it's done in conjunction. Like it's done in a group setting.
Yeah.
Usually when you talk about point-to-point movement, it's usually your own character piece.
Sure.
Here, it feels like a tug of war against an invisible force. You're trying to sway the sails to go in favor of the winds that you want, but there might be some other more powerful gusts moving that towards the west instead of east.
So one thing that I feel like we actually haven't talked about yet is going to be the fact that there are going to be variable player powers in this game. Some of the artwork's still in progress, but I'll pop some of these down. Every character is going to have a special and more powerful ability that gives them agency over the game that they're playing. Now, this is interesting and unique for a social deduction game because it means that you can be strategic with when and how you use your power to not only manipulate the board, but also manipulate other players.
Yep. And the powers are really game-changing. It could be the difference between having here in the very last spot revealing the last character that you needed or that was doubt within the table and being able to push this forward. And that idea and that opportunity for control in a social deduction game like this is pretty powerful, right?
Now, a lot of these powers are going to deal with the idea of mutiny, because there is the opportunity to overthrow the captain when you're playing the game. They're going to deal with things like guns. You're going to gain and have and keep guns throughout each stage of this game, getting a refill here in the middle.
Yep.
And if you decide, and you and the rest of the crew decide that the captain is not fit to lead, you can hold and reveal and stage a mutiny on the deck and take the captainship for yourself by force, or take it by, I think, group agreement based on if there's a tie.
Yeah.
Or at least a little bit of a random vote.
And that's actually a really good point that we should have touched within the social deduction area. Usually in social deduction, it's done through a simple voting. Everybody has the power of one vote. However, if you start accumulating these tokens, a single person might be able to overthrow a particular decision.
One or two people may be able to take the seat from the captain, and certainly you have agency over controlling who and if you get the captain seat yourself.
So there's not necessarily, it's not done by the majority of the table. It's done
have
by
to be.
whoever has the most power
Whoever
in the table.
really wants this to happen this time, they could make it so.
And that can cast a certain set of aspersions throughout everyone, and immediately cast doubt on whoever's so convicted in convicting the captain.
Yeah. And these player powers are going to tie in here, not only with that, but like the troublemaker here, immediately after guns are revealed, choose a player. Each of that player's guns count as 2 guns for current mutiny. So instead of adding to yourself, you could say, I could be working with Jan here, I could know he's part of the cult, I could just look at him, flip my card. I could be like, dude, play 2. Play 2. Trust me. 2 goes down. Those are now 4. He's on his own, overthrown the captain.
Yep.
And we're now in charge.
Yeah, now we get to choose. Maybe we planned it out so nobody else had more guns to employ at that point. Everybody spent them, and now we have total control of the ship.
Yeah, which is a nice place to be.
Yeah, it's the best place to be.
I feel like we've gone over the same points 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, a little bit.
We've had the opportunity to sit down and play this. While this is a game that I think is potentially hard for me to get to the table because of the number of players, if I was going to have a group of 6, 7, or 8 people over, if I wanted to seek out and play a social deduction game, this is the one I'm currently returning back to. This is hands down one of not only the most interesting but the most fun social deduction games I've played, and they're honestly not my style of game. And this one is.
And there's a reason for that, because the scope of this is much larger than other social deduction games that you probably played before.
This feels a lot more like a board game to me. Yeah.
For example, the one game that I could think of that tries to achieve this, or is probably equally as heavy, is Blood on the Clock Tower. But that is a completely different take on social deduction, because that's much more traditional, actually. It deals a little bit more with role-playing. As you said, this feels like a true combination of board gaming elements, like true mechanics, and that social deduction feeling of casting
it's
doubt
not
and
all-
aspersions,
It's
etc.
not all sitting in a circle and yelling at each other. There's
Exactly.
a game mechanic and actual, like, there's strategic elements to this. If you don't play the board game side of this correctly, you won't win the social deduction elements in it.
Exactly, and that's huge because you don't necessarily have to be the best at the table of reading others. You don't have to try and discern everyone's poker face. You can just, by the
Let
state of the
everyone else deal
board,
with that.
by the state of the board, you can start understanding, like, hey, they're getting really close to yellow. Have they been pushing so that they can then suddenly make a powerful left here and start condemning more people? Well, hey, wait, I gotta talk about this with everyone. Like, explain it because it is now apparent on the board.
Sure.
And that's just something very powerful that you don't tend to see in other social deduction games either.
Whatever the case, I feel like we've been over a lot of elements of this a few times, because there's things that we find really genuinely very interesting, and I feel like I've said this sentence a few times.
Yes, you have.
As it is.
Yes, you have.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. If you are checking out Feed the Kraken because you are into social deduction games and you're thinking to yourself, "Is this the one for me?" Spoiler alert:
It might be.
no, it is. Like, this is a good one. Look, this is not, we do some sponsored videos and stuff like that. We always let people know at the very front, this isn't a sponsored video.
Yeah, I know.
This is a damn good game.
You can't do that.
I am doing it.
It feels very... Oh, gosh.
Thank you for being here.
Mutiny! I'm placing all of it down.
I am genuinely excited to play this game again.
Yeah.
Whatever the case, whatever you do,
Remember to do the important thing.
get out and play some games.
We'll see you guys next time. Thanks.